Hello, human geographers. We are back at it again. Tonight, we begin our next chapter in our culture unit, and that is on religion. So, here we go. Before we get started with this particular lecture, and basically every lecture, um, I think it's important to have a conversation about what we are doing and why we're doing it. Because religion tends to be something that for a lot of people is very, very personal. And so talking about it in a classroom setting can be, at times people may feel uncomfortable with it. People may have questions about it. And so I want everyone to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Right? So, first thing I want folks to understand is that when we're talking about religion, we are not going to promote nor are we going to devalue any particular religious faith or belief. Right? We're going to try and stay as unbiased, as neutral on all of this as possible so that we can understand all these different religions, religious beliefs, and faiths on the same plane. Next thing I want you guys to know is that this is a survey course still. All right. I know that with AP, it seems like we get into a lot of details and things like that. But everything that we're going to say, generally speaking, is true. But I do want you guys to know that there are a lot of local variations and differences that, because of the lack of time, we might not be able to get into, or that I just plain don't know about. So I want you guys, I want to encourage you guys that in your notes, please write down if something seems different in the way that you've heard about this faith or the way that you practice this faith. Write it down. Let us know so that we can have a conversation about this in class so that we can all have a better understanding of the diversity of our world. And finally, we're going to be looking at religions from the geographic perspective, which sometimes may be slightly different from the perspective of a follower of a particular faith. Again, I want to encourage you, please let us know. Let us know about those discrepancies. That way we can have a much deeper understanding of how our world works and people's faiths and different cultures. And I don't ever want to discourage the kind of discussion that this may generate. But at the same time, want people to understand that we're not going to promote or devalue any faith while we're going through this. So here we go. Let's get started. So as we often do, let's go ahead and start out with a few definitions so we understand what we're talking about here. First off, we have what is a religion? Definition: a system of beliefs and practices that attempts to order life in terms of culturally perceived ultimate priorities. And that's really important to understand because that's why we're studying this, because different religions are going to have different ultimate priorities. And therefore, people are going to structure their lives. People are going to order their lives in different ways. They're going to interact with things in different ways. We're going to see it manifest itself in different ways. And as human geographers, that's what we're looking for, is how are people doing things a little bit differently. And as far as our definition of religion, the reason why they're doing things differently is because of those different ultimate priorities. And an example of a religion could be, let's say, Christianity. And I'm going to kind of go down the list and keep with a consistent theme of examples. Our next definition is branch, a large and fundamental division within a religion. So, continuing with Christianity, there are three major branches. There are a lot of smaller branches, smaller churches, things like that. Three major branches, large fundamental divisions within a religion. Those three branches are Roman Catholicism, Orthodox Christianity, and Protestantism. And that is in order of how old those different branches are and when those divisions took place. Then we have denominations. Denominations are a division of a branch that unites a number of local congregations into a single legal and administrative body. If we were to take one of those branches of Christianity, let's say, Protestantism, an example of a denomination might be Baptist or Lutheran or Methodist, all different denominations of the branch of Protestantism within the religion of Christianity. And finally, we have a sect. A sect is a relatively small group that has broken away from an established denomination. Now, a lot of times sects have kind of a negative connotation to them. That is not necessarily the case, and I'll give you an example of why it's not a case. For example, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS, or Mormon, began as a sect which broke away from other Christian denominations. Within its, a lot of scholars kind of associate it as part of the Protestant branch of Christianity. But you're going to hear people who say, no, it's its own separate branch of Christianity. And now, and that's important to understand because things have changed. Yes, it broke away as a small group beginning in New York State. And now it is its own either denomination or branch, depending on who you talk to, of the religion of Christianity. And so again, that's why a sect is not, a lot of times people have this connotation or association with it as being negative. It's definitely not. Sometimes it can be, but there's by itself, a sect is not necessarily bad. We have to look at the details of what we're talking about. Right? So let's take a look at a visual. So this gives us a visual of same kind of thing that we just looked at. So religion, Christianity, branch, Protestantism, denomination is Lutheran, or that's an example, and a congregation, because when you look at the definition of denomination, it says uniting several congregations. An example of a congregation could be the First Lutheran Church of Bonita. Now, here's what I would like you to do on this slide. We already gave an example for Christianity, the Protestant branch, denomination, congregation, so on and so forth. I'd like you to try and create your own example using your prior knowledge with religion. It could be a religion that you know of. It could be a religion that you follow. It doesn't matter what, but I want to see if you can use the same kind of vocabulary in a different example. So in your notes, please do provide an additional example. See how far you're able to get. See what questions come up during the process of coming up with your own example. I'll give you a moment to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at a geographic example of a particular religion. And in this case, we're actually talking about a particular branch of a particular religion, and that is Roman Catholicism. Right? So in this map, we can see the way that Roman Catholicism is divided up across the United States. And the Roman Catholic branch of Christianity is a really good example of a hierarchical religion, a religion that has a very distinctive hierarchy, and we'll define that and talk about that more later. But this is the visual divisions of the United States within the Roman Catholic Church. So, because it has a hierarchy, the shape that I want you to associate with this is a pyramid. So here we go. At the bottom of the pyramid, and you can't see it on this particular map, are parishes. And parishes are administered by priests. Okay? Several parishes together might make up or will make up a diocese. And a diocese is administered by a bishop, and then several dioceses together would make up a province. So the dioceses you can see outlined there in black. The provinces, which are administered by archbishops, are outlined there in red. Now, a diocese that is administered by an archbishop is called an archdiocese. And those are the dot distribution element of this map. Those are the red dots. And you'll notice that most of them are big cities. LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Miami. So they're big cities on there. So what we've got is parishes at the bottom, administered by priests. Above that, we've got dioceses administered by bishops. Above that, we've got provinces administered by archbishops. Some archbishops might be recognized as cardinals, and the College of Cardinals are responsible for, whenever it is necessary, selecting the person at the very top of the hierarchy, and that is the Pope. And the Pope is actually the head of the Diocese of Rome and is actually in charge of the entire Roman Catholic Church. So that's how that hierarchy looks, and this is how it looks for the United States of America and the divisions of the Roman Catholic branch of Christianity in the United States. So shifting gears a little bit, let's go ahead and talk about some of our broad differences in the way that we categorize religions. And I'm going to tell you guys right now that these two terms, universalizing and ethnic, you need to know for every single religion that we look at. Is it a universalizing religion? Is it an ethnic religion? So let's get into what those are. A universalizing religion is a religion that claims global truth and applicability regardless of ethnicity or culture group, and seeks the conversion of all people via evangelism and missionary work. So universalizing tries to be universal. Everyone can be a part of it. And so, perhaps unsurprisingly, more people identify with a universalizing religion. About 58% of the world's people identify with a universalizing religion, with the vast majority of that 58% coming from three religions in particular. There are other universalizing religions that we will look at, but not with the same following as these big three. Right? So some examples of universalizing religions in order of the following that they have. Christianity is the largest religion on earth, over 2 billion followers. Islam coming in at second with over 1 billion followers. And then Buddhism with several million, I think 400 million followers. And there are other universalizing religions, but that accounts for a fairly substantial portion of Earth's population self-identifying with a universalizing religion. And you're going to see a much larger geographic area over which these religions are spread as well. On the flip side, ethnic religions are definition a religion with a relatively concentrated spatial distribution whose principles are likely to be based on the physical characteristics of the particular location in which its adherents, those are followers, are concentrated. Ethnic religions do not actively seek converts. About a quarter of the world's population self-identifies with an ethnic religion. That's going to be some examples. Hinduism, Judaism, Confucianism, Taoism, Shintoism, Animism are all examples of ethnic religions. And to be even more specific, Confucianism and Taoism aren't actually religions, but we'll cover that in a later lecture. Right? And I'm going to tell you guys right now, have to know for every religion, whether it's universalizing or ethnic, as we go forward. Another way that we can differentiate between religions is in the number of gods that they follow. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look at them. Monotheistic, mono meaning one, singular, the doctrine or belief in the existence of only one God. Judaism, Christianity, Islam are all monotheistic religions. In fact, they are all somewhat related to one another because they are categorized or labeled as Abrahamic religions, a term that I would recommend you know. On the off chance that you see a question that says, which of the following is an Abrahamic religion? I could see that possibly being it, or drawing connections between them, something like that. And Judaism is, according to some scholars, the oldest current monotheistic religion, though some will disagree with that and say that it's actually Zoroastrianism, which is believed by many to be the oldest monotheistic religion in our history. Now, Zoroastrianism began in what was called Persia, modern-day Iran. And some scholars believe that the concept of monotheism began with Zoroaster and diffused and influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as a result. Now that's debated by some, but in the interest of looking at multiple perspectives, some people say that it influenced other monotheistic religions. And there is still some following for Zoroastrians around the world today, particularly in modern day Iran, as well as in probably more followers found in India. So those are monotheistic, singular, one God. Polytheistic, multiple gods, that's what poly means, multiple, more than one. Belief in or worship of more than one God. Hinduism is a great example of a polytheistic religion. Shintoism is polytheistic, but depending on who you speak to, it could be 2, it could be up to 8,000. Really kind of depends, and it depends on whether or not you're talking about gods or godlike figures. There's some disagreement as far as that in the academic community. I've seen different sources saying different things with that. Some animist beliefs are considered polytheistic. Other scholars say that it's actually monotheistic. There's a single God with lots of spirits and things like that. So a lot of nuances, a lot of disagreement as far as this is concerned. Very, very interesting. And I'm sure there'd probably be disagreements among adherents, of followers of these different religions as well, if they started to weigh in on this. So really kind of interesting. So taking a look at our different hearths, and again, what is a hearth? It's one of our vocabulary terms. So what is a hearth? This is where these religions began. So there's 3 major hearths that we could include, and obviously we could be more specific as we will talk about in just a moment. The Middle East hearth, using our macro-cultural region terms, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, we could include Zoroastrianism as a part of that, as well as other religions too. And if you take a look at the map there, the map is actually even more specific, because whereas we just lumped it together in the Middle East, the map says, well, Christianity and Judaism began in Israel, Zoroastrianism began in Iran, whereas Islam began in Saudi Arabia. And all of that is certainly true. It just depends on what scale you're analyzing these topics. Northern India, the hearth of Hinduism and Buddhism, there is a connection there between those 2 religions, despite the fact that Hinduism is an ethnic religion, Buddhism is a universalizing religion. There is some connections there with Siddhartha Gautama and kind of his perspective on things. We'll talk about that in a later lecture. And then finally, the East Asian hearth, the origins of Confucianism, Taoism, and Shintoism, along with other religions as well. You'll notice on there, on the map, there are more religions than the ones that we just specifically went through. Not a bad idea to see some of those and see where they began. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our worldwide map for religion. Now, this is one of those maps, just like our world language map, that any question that comes from this map, we should be able to answer. All right, and that's kind of tricky because we don't know what those questions might be, but it's a core map. We have to know this. We have to know the information here. So let's kind of run through this. All right. First off, we've got different branches for some of our universalizing religions. You'll notice there it's Choropleth map, national scale. We see that for Christianity, we've got yellow, light orange, and kind of a darker orange. The yellow is going to be Roman Catholic. So we see that largely throughout Latin America. Notice the pie graphs. The pie graphs give us a little sense of the diversity that exists there, because we can see not everyone in these areas necessarily practices that religion. So the pie graphs gives us a sense of that, a little less induction in this map as a result. So Latin America, very strongly Roman Catholic, southern parts of Europe, as well as parts of sub-Saharan Africa. We can see Protestant, especially in Anglo-America, the United States, Canada, Northern Europe, southern parts of Africa, Oceania as well. And then finally, Orthodox Christianity out in Eastern Europe. A lot of times it's called Eastern Orthodox, so that's a little geographic association we can make with it. Continuing on, we can see the two different branches of Islam. We've got Sunni Islam, which constitutes about 83% of the world's Muslims. And that's that gray that you can see throughout much of North Africa and Southwest Asia into Central Asia as well. Indonesia is that same color as well. And then the green color that you see there in the Middle East is Shia Islam or Shiite Islam. And this is the type of question that I can see being asked. What country has a Shia majority? And then they list 5 countries with the best answer, as you can see from this map, being Iran. Iran is the one country where we see a distinct Shia majority, whereas many other Muslim countries are going to have a Sunni majority. Right. But it also extends in the southern parts of Iraq as well. We'll talk about that next lecture. Buddhism we can largely see in East Asia. Switching gears, talking about some of our ethnic religions, we can see in India, Hinduism, as well as in Israel, Judaism. We can see, they call it traditional African religions or animism in sub-Saharan Africa. So there's a lot of different diversity on this map, and we have to be ready for that. And so we'll continue to talk about this as we move through some of these other lectures. But again, this is a map you have to print out, have to include it in your map packet. It is a non-negotiable as far as information that we need to know. So let's take a look at this pie graph, which looks at global populations and percentages of people who identify with different religions or branches of these religions. All right. So starting out with our universalizing religions, Christianity is the world's largest religion with over 2 billion followers. Most of that is Roman Catholic, followed by Protestant, and then the third branch that is the largest is Orthodox Christianity. And then when you add in all the other Christian branches together, it would be about another 4% of the world's population. As far as Islam goes, the world's second largest religion, the vast majority are Sunni Muslims. You can see that they're 19% of the world's population identifying as Sunni Muslim, 3% Shiite or Shia Muslim. The next largest universalizing religion would be Buddhism. Then shifting gears to our ethnic religions, we can see on there Hinduism. We can see Chinese traditional, which would be your Confucianism and Taoism. And then other ethnic religions, that would include Judaism. We'll talk about Shintoism. So there are some other ones that would factor in there. Now, going back to an earlier question, we said 58% of the world's population was practicing or a follower and adherent to a universalizing religion. 26% were followers of an ethnic religion. We said, where's that other 16%? Well, here we go. That other 16% is what we classify as non-religious. We're going to look at what that means on the next slide. So when we say non-religious, about 1 billion people in the world are considered non-religious. And there's a few different designations that we need to know as far as non-religion is concerned. These are terms that you might have heard before, but we want to make sure that we are familiar with. All right. Atheist is a lack of belief in any god or any gods. And it should be noted as a political point that, for example, China is officially atheist. But to point this out, just because a government declares that they are officially atheist, that they officially don't believe in any gods, does that mean that all the people in their country don't believe in any gods? Well, no, of course not, because in China there's lots of Buddhists. There are people who live their lives, and while not a religion, according to Confucian principles and Taoism, there's lots of Muslims and Christians in China. So while the government declaring it officially atheist is one thing, doesn't mean that there aren't people in the country who don't have religious faith and beliefs. All right. Agnostics are going to be people who may believe that a god or gods do exist, but they're not entirely certain. A lot of times, if the discussion of agnostics comes up, there's a lot of times points brought up about evidence, that they want to see some evidence of God and things like that. And so that's a part of where the uncertainty may come in as far as agnostics are concerned. And then finally, as far as secularism, it is one of our vocabulary terms, and the definition is this: a rejection of or indifference to religion and religious practice. And there is an element of secularism that is built into the United States Constitution. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution reads, in part, like this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And in fact, the two major components of secularism are represented there. One of the major values of secularism is the separation of church and state. And you can see that in the first part of the First Amendment, where it says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This is known as the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It means that, Congress, the government, is not going to officially endorse a religion. So there is a separation of church, religion, and state, the government. Then, the other major component of secularism is that different religions and religious values and beliefs are going to be treated equally before the law. That there's not going to be preference towards one religion, nor is there going to be penalty towards another. And that's where the free exercise clause comes in the First Amendment. It says, again, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So Congress isn't going to step in and say, no, you can't do that. You can't practice your religion that way. Now, this isn't a government course and this isn't a government lecture, but it should be noted that these rights aren't universal. And the Supreme Court has looked at, elements of the Establishment Clause, the Free Exercise Clause, and there have been times when the Supreme Court has said, no, you can't practice your religion like that. An example might be kind of an extreme example, but if someone were to say, well, it's part of my religion that I have to perform human sacrifice, the Supreme Court would say, no, can't do that. All right. So there are limits to how far these rights go, and typically those rights have a limit at the rights of others. If your right to practice your religion infringes on someone else's right to their safety, that's something where the government might step in and say, no, you can't do that. But that gets into a much more complicated topic, and we'll allow your AP government teacher to really delve into that in a few years. But this is our beginning to religion. Our next lecture, we're going to dive into some of the specifics with several of our universalizing religions. So I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful night, everyone.